Hey now Brawlers, today we're going to take a look at a game where you will not be killing a single dragon or alien. And I know that's a stretch for my channel, but nevertheless we are going to take a look at Viticulture, the strategic game of winemaking from Jamie Stegmaier and Alan Stone, who comprise Stonemaier Games. As the name implies, in this game you are trying to make wine. It is a worker placement Euro game taking place in old-timey rustic Italy. You're trying to plant vines in order to get grapes, in order to turn those grapes into wine, in order to fulfill orders, in order to get victory points. Of course, it's more complicated than that. In order to plant some of those vines, you're going to need better structures. In order to get other bonuses, you need even more structures. And of course, it's a race because you're trying to be the best winemaker possible before the other players are. In other words, you need to get 20 points. So this is typically out of my wheelhouse of games, of course, not just for the theme, but for the gameplay itself. I'm not much of a heavy Euro gamer, although I would say this one falls into the medium weight. Did I like it? Well, let's take a look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Okay, I'm going to give you a brief overview of Viticulture, the strategic game of winemaking. The theme of the game is that you are in old-time Italy and you are trying to make wine. Specifically, you're trying to make grapes to make them into wine in order to fulfill orders, which is going to get you victory points. Your ultimate goal is to be the first person to get to 20 victory points. That's actually going to end to signal the end of the game. Everyone else, you finish out the round of play, then whoever has the most points up to a maximum of 25 points is going to be the winner. And then there are tiebreakers like lira, which is the money in the game, and things like that. But ultimately, your goal is to just be the first one to cross that 20-point threshold. So this is your typical setup for 3 players. Everyone gets their own player board. You also have workers. This is a worker placement game. So you'll have some starting workers, which you'll use if you're not familiar with worker placement games. You'll put them on specific areas of the board, including perhaps your own board, in order to take a specific action, which is going to enable you to make the wine that you're going to use to fulfill the orders. You also, so these are what your normal workers will look like, these little guys here. But everyone also starts off with a grande worker who's going to have a special power in that you can place him like a normal worker, but he can go on a spot that's already full. You see, Viticulture, like a lot of other worker placement games, you're only going to have a limited amount of spots available depending on the number of players. So for a 3-player game, you're only going to have a couple of spots per area that you're going to be able to access. So that means that depending on where you are in turn order, you may be denied from going to a normal spot on the board, but your grande worker is always going to guarantee that you're able to take the action anyways, because you can go to a spot even if there's not an actual spot available for you. The other things that you start off with are a few bucks and a lira, a Pinot vine. The vine cards look like this. They'll have the name, the type of structure you need on your player board in order to build it. And you'll also have, I'll tell you what kind of grapes it produces. In this case, a red grape and a white grape. Now, I mentioned structures, and you have a player board here, and a lot of the game is going to require you to build specific structures. You have a trellis and a cottage and a wine tasting room. You'll need a trellis almost right off the bat in order to make some of your first starter vines, including the Pinot. And in order to do that, and in order to do really anything in this game, you're going to need to take the different worker placement action spots. Other things that are important on your board are your crush pads, which is where your grapes are going to go when you start producing them. And then you have your wine cellars, which go into an increasing capacity depending on the value of your wine. So you're also going to need to make more cellars eventually if you want to sell more and more expensive wine. But we'll go in turn order, in a phase order, as to how the game is actually played. The first thing you do during the spring phase, because this game takes place all year long in different seasons, is actually place tokens down for turn order. So you'll randomly determine at the start who's going to get this cool looking grape start player token. And that player is going to be the first to decide where you're going to put your rooster token, which is also pretty cool. You have a track over here going from 1 to 7 of your turn order placement. So it's starting with the first player, you'll decide where you're going to put your rooster. Now, if you do that, let's say that you put yourself right on the number 1 spot. Well, that means that you're going to be the first player to go and place one of your workers during the actual summer phase, and then going through into the winter phase as well. However, you don't get any kind of special bonus for doing that. If you were to go in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th place, then you're actually going to get something for going further back. So for instance, the 2nd place is going to let you draw another Vine card, and you are going to eventually need more Vine cards. 4th place gives you another Lira. 6th place actually gives you a victory point, and 7th place actually gives you an extra temporary worker that you can use for the round. So essentially giving you an extra action. So sometimes you may not want to go first if you have the choice, but regardless, each player will eventually choose where they're going to go. And if I could, there you go. And that will be locked in. Now that's your turn order of worker placement for the rest of this year. Now we go into the summer phase, and that's where you're actually going to be putting your workers out, but only on one half of the board. The board is split into summer and winter spaces, and each of them has different types of actions that you can take, and we'll go through some of those right now. So the first thing, one of the first spaces is playing your summer cards. There are 2 types of visitor cards, summer visitor cards and winter visitor cards. And these are sort of like action cards that enable you to give special effects that you normally wouldn't be able to do during the course of the game. So in order to get money, victory points, things like that. You'll actually start off with a random one of these. So let's just take a look at the random one I got. The blacksmith says you can build a structure at a -2 discount. Let's take a look at some other ones. The auctioneer lets you discard... here we go. The auctioneer lets you discard 4 cards to either gain 2 victory points or +4 Lira. Another one. The horticulturist, so you can plant any vine even if you don't have the required structures, or uproot and discard 2 vines to gain 3 victory points. So they give you a wide range of effects, and the only way that you can play those cards are by going to this space. Now every space also has a special bonus space on it. If you're the first person to go to that bonus space in particular, you'll get a bonus special effect. So for the play summer card space, you're actually going to be able to play a second card if you have it and if you want to. So that's the important part of being able to place first in some instances. If you place your grande worker there, if the spaces were full, you'll never be able to get that bonus. Now you can alternatively go to the market here, which is going to let you play a vine card. The vine cards, like the Pinot vine that you start with, you're going to be able to place those into your field, but this place only lets you draw them, and if you get the bonus action, you can draw a second one as well. If you want to actually plant them, you need to go to this field here, which again, if you take the bonus action, you can plant a second one as well. When you plant vines, you get to put them into the field spots of your player board. You have 3 different fields. However, each field can only hold 6 value of grapes. So if I planted my Pinot card, and let's see, planted my Syrah card as well, I'm already at 4 value total, 2, 3, and 4. So I can make 3 red grapes and then a white grape as well. And I cannot go above 6. If I want to put more vines out there after that, I'd have to go into my other fields, and if I'm stuck then I'd have to uproot them by using the plow action, which I'll get back to in a second. So another space that we kind of skipped over was you can sell your grape tokens. Once you actually harvest them, which I'll get to later, then you'll be and get grape tokens, which will symbolize by using these little tokens here. You can go to this spot and sell them for money, and also, depending on which crush pad they're in, and actually get a victory point as well for your bonus. You can give a tour in order to get money, and potentially a bonus money if you get there first. You can take this spot to get a structure. Structures are going to be very important for not only being able to do more things with your player board, have a better seller, things like that, but there's special structures like the windmill, which is going to give you bonus points whenever you plant a vine, or the wine tasting rooms gives you a bonus point every time you do the tour action, things like that. And also the yoke, which I alluded to earlier, which is this thing here, which is going to let you put it on your player board, and actually gives you an extra spot that you can use to harvest, or to harvest a field without having to take one of the actions out on the board, or in order to uproot one of the vines that you have, which is a rare action, but you might want to do it if you need to make room for a better vine. So those are all the different summer actions, but the thing is, all the workers that you have available, and you only start off with 2 normal ones in the grande worker, are all you have for the whole year of play. So if you want to be able to take advantage of the winter spaces, you may need to hold some of your workers back. You'll go in turn order, placing workers down until you decide to pass, and when you pass, you are out of this phase. Then you're going to go into the fall phase. The fall phase is where each player gets to draw either a winter or summer visitor card. And if you've built a cottage, which is one of the other structures you can build, you're actually going to be able to get an extra one of either of those cards, your choice. Then you go into the winter phase, and this is where you have another round of worker placement, doing the same exact rules but with different spots available. This spot lets you get the wine order cards, which are the main way that you're going to get victory points in the game. Not the only way, but the main way. In the wine order cards, they'll tell you what wines you need up at the top. So red wine and white wine in this instance. How many victory points you get for fulfilling this order, and how much continuous money you'll get every round for doing so as well. If I fulfill this order, not only would I immediately bump up 5 victory points, and I'm sorry I forgot to put the little victory point trackers out here before, but I would also get to take this little wine bottle here and put it over on this little compass-like thing. And this will tell me, as I move up, how much money I get from round to round at the end of the year just for having fulfilled these orders before. Now, the other spots, let's see, here's where you can play winter cards. Winter cards function the same way as summer cards, but they have effects that have more to do with the other winter actions that you take. So, for instance, the benefactor says, well, this one just lets you draw a vine card and a summer card, whereas the Crush Expert lets you draw a wine order and make up to 3 wine tokens. Another couple of examples. The Crusher lets you make up to 4 wine tokens, which is a much more efficient way to do it rather than use the action space. And the Marketer lets you fulfill a wine order and gain an extra victory point. Those are just some examples of the winter cards. This space lets you harvest a field. The bonus action is to harvest an extra field, so you'll choose one of your fields in which you have made or planted vines before, and you'll immediately gain that many production of grapes. So in this case, I would gain a 3 red grape and 1 white grape. I'll put the tokens there signifying that. If I already have a spot, like let's say that I then harvest another field for 3 red, I would just bump that one down. So I don't lose anything, but it just gets downgraded instead of having 2 3s instead. Then we have the making wine tokens. Ultimately, you want to make wine tokens because those are how you're going to fulfill orders. So in order to do that, you're going to look at the board, make sure that you have the right seller for what you're trying to do. But if it's just a basic wine order, you would go there, fulfill it, make up the 2 wine tokens, so I can make this red grape 2 into a red wine 2, and this white one into a one white grape into 1 white wine. I can also combine wines. I know it's kind of hard to see here on the player board. Well, here, let's do this. It'll tell you a little cheat sheet here that will show you how you can actually combine to make better wines, blushes and sparkling wines, which you need for some of the higher level wine orders that you have. In order to do that, you're actually going to combine wines together, and you must have at least a level 2 seller in order to do that, so you have to have constructed that before. So if I wanted to make 5 blush, I would take any combination of 2 wines that add up to 5 of red and white wine, take both of them off, let's see, I added 3 and a 2, and then I would just put that there. Now I have that wine available to me. Then you have down here the actual fulfilling of the orders. You go here, you get to fulfill one of those wine orders I showed you before. The bonus action is to actually gain an extra point. You have the ability to train more workers in this spot where you can just go there, spend 4. If you have the bonus action, you spend 1 less, and you're able to take an extra worker from your own personal stock, stick it there for right now, and then at the end of the year, you'll gain that, and starting with the next round, you'll have another worker to use for the rest of the game. And I believe the only other spot I didn't talk about was this carts down here, which is just like a general open spot you can go to at any time during the year in order to just gain a lira. And it can fulfill any number of workers that want to go there from any number of players. It's just the thing you do if you don't have anything else to do. And once you get done with that, then you're going to go into the year end where you just clean up. Now, among the cleanup, in addition to taking back your workers and making sure you only have 7 total cards in hand and taking back your roosters in order for preparation for the next round, you also have to age all of your wines and your grapes. So that's something to consider before you get to this phase, whether or not you want to do something with those, knowing that they're going to age ahead of time, or plan out ahead of time knowing that. And really, that's just a quick summation of the game. You're going to start back from scratch, choosing your turn order in the spring. The first order token will pass, and you're going to keep using all the different action spaces, hopefully getting more workers, getting more action cards in order to use, because the cards can be very powerful during the course of the game. Using all the spaces you have available to you, trying to get an engine going in order to make grapes, make those grapes into wine, use those wines to fulfill orders, and try to get as many victory points as you can, because the first person to cross 20 will signal the end of the game, and whoever has the most points at the end of that round is going to be the winner. That's just a very brief overview of Viticulture. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Stonemaier Games doesn't have a lot of games under their belt at the moment, just Viticulture and Euphoria, and there will be an upcoming expansion to Viticulture soon, but nevertheless, even at this juncture, I don't think that anyone is going to be accusing Stonemaier Games of having ugly games. Quite the opposite. Viticulture, much like Euphoria, is really a beautiful game. Not just the quality of the components of the really cool building meeples that are in the game, like the trellis and the cottage and the yoke and all these different things, and the meeples themselves, like the El Grande worker. I don't know if it's El Grande worker. Sorry, I made this game Spanish for a moment there, but not just those things, but also the artwork. I mean, just looking at the board, it's just phenomenal artwork that brings to mind other famous Eurogame artists like Michael Menzel, and I can't remember the guy who does the artwork for games like Agricola and Caverna, but like that too. I mean, it's, you know, very, very gorgeous looking and functional as well. I will say that for the player boards that each of the players have, it's a little bit hard to tell what's going on the first time that you play, because at that point, I think that trying to have this beautiful artwork together with being practical and functional is a little bit tough, but you'll get over that easy enough. That's just kind of a nitpick there. And if you get really good at remembering what everything does, you can actually play on the other side of the player board where it's really just the artwork. So presentation-wise, not really any major complaints whatsoever. It's just a gorgeous game. Now, speaking about the gameplay, and I mentioned this in my intro, that Euro games are not typically my thing unless they have a very good theme. Now, I'm not going to say that Viticulture has the best theme ever, because it really is just worker placement. And for any worker placement game, it's kind of hard to bring out the theme too much. There's not like a ton of interaction or you know, conflict between the players that would kind of force some theme to come out. But nevertheless, once you get the engine going, it does feel, you have that sense of building up to something, which in this case happens to be wine. And I did sort of get that feeling. You're planting vines, you're getting the grapes from those vines, you're making that into wine, you're fulfilling the orders. Once you get that chain of things going, it does feel really cool. And in that regard, together with the artwork, I think that there is a lot of theme to be had here, and I like that aspect of it quite a bit. And I do like the mechanics of this game a lot. I'm kind of becoming a sucker for worker placement because it's such a simple but elegant mechanic, and I think that it plays out pretty well here. It's not too difficult to get workers, which is like the #1 thing I've learned you have to do in worker placement games. So at a very early point, you're going to feel like you have more and more actions. It may not feel like that in the first year or month or whatever you would call it in game time, but I guess season, but it will feel like that eventually. You'll feel kind of overwhelmed with the lack of actions you can do, but that will go away. And soon, once you get enough workers and once you have your engine going, you'll feel like there's a lot of different things that you can do, and you have a lot of options. It's just a matter of what you do with all of those turns and with your workers. I like the concept of the Grande worker, which I personally have not experienced in other games, other than like having special action cards that just say you can take a space that's already been taken. Just knowing that everyone has that capability right from the beginning of the game to use your Grande worker, that is a really cool aspect of the game. And just knowing that you'll be able to do whatever you want, but again, you're not going to be able to get the bonus for that location if you just use your Grande worker. So maybe you still want to take that spot early. That's up to you. But it's one of the little interesting decisions that you have to make during the course of the game. I didn't think I would like this at first just from reading the rules, but I like that you have the summer and winter aspects of the game, because this is another important decision you have to make. And this is really, really prevalent throughout the entire game. How many workers am I going to hold back in order to get into that winter season? Now, as you go through the game, more and more of your workers are going to be devoted to winter. But still, there's some important things that you can do throughout the course of the game over in the summer section, especially building structures. You're going to be doing that a lot. Just like you need workers as quickly as possible, you really do need at least some of the structures very, very early in order to give yourself more bonuses. And that's another sort of differing paths thing of what you're going to try to do. Do you want to go for the locations like the wine tasting room or the windmill, which give you a reliable amount of points, but kind of, slowly, just kind of like workhorse points, but they're expensive buildings as well? Or do you just go all out with trying to get the best vines possible, build up that way, maybe get as many grapes as possible, because then you can turn them in for money with that spot in the summer season? Those are different paths that you can take. But if you really want to focus on making the wine and fulfilling the orders as quickly as possible, you need to focus on winter as early as possible. Now, there are the summer visitor cards and the winter visitor cards that are really a huge aspect of the game. When I was first reading the rules, to me, it didn't come across how powerful those cards could be and just how much of an impact they have. Other worker placement games that I've played, like Lords of Waterdeep and Alien Frontiers, have cards that you play outside of the typical boundaries of just placing workers down the board that have these special effects that can have a big impact on gameplay, but really in Viticulture, they're really, really critical to the success. And if I was going to complain about the game, and I will, I guess, that would be my major complaint, is that the cards can really throw the balance of the game in some interesting directions, not always in good ways. Because first off, especially in the summer, because maybe that's when you need them the most in the beginning, it just seems that way, there are some cards that are clearly better than others. There's a card that would give you, like, just play it $4, but there's another card where you have to sacrifice victory points in order to get money. You may be able to sacrifice a lot of victory points to get a lot of money, but still, this is a race game and you got to get to 20 points. And just some of them, like, where you can, like one of the winter cards where you can take 2 different actions that you would normally have to spend 2 workers and 2 turns just to do, is way powerful. And then another card lets you take discard cards back, played at the right moment. It's just immensely powerful, and I think it's really the key in many circumstances to winning the game, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But it's odd how it interacts with the worker placement, because sometimes you can feel like it's more important what you do with the cards than what you actually do with your workers, even though it is a worker placement game. But I do like that they involve the card play a lot. I just wonder if some things are more powerful than they should be. But I think it's a testament to the rest of the game that I didn't really let it ruin my enjoyment too much, because I was on both ends of that. I won games that I played by using those cards, and I've lost games that I played by other players using those cards much better than I did, or just getting the right cards at the right time. It works both ways, so in that regard, maybe it balances out a little bit more. The game length is fine, I think. You keep it to 3 or 4 players. To be honest, I did not play it with the 5 or 6 players that the game could be played with, and I really would never want to. With 3 or 4 players, you're still looking at least a 2-hour game. Your first game might take you up to 3 hours, but again, my group, I think, is becoming clear, is a little more prone to AP than other people's groups, so your mileage might vary on that. But even so, I still would not necessarily recommend playing with 5 or 6, because I think it's just going to drag out too much. More players is more time, more chances of AP, and the game can get a little too chaotic for my taste. I think that this game is in the sweet spot of a medium, moderate weight Euro for me, and I want to kind of relish the fact that that I have this sort of strategic, methodical game. And I think with more players in the mix, I would kind of lose that. So I think that for me, at least 3 or 4 players is going to be a sweet spot. I may eventually try 5 or 6, but I don't know that it would really be where I want to be as far as time and what's going on in the game. But I think that all works pretty well. Like, again, I like all the different types of action spaces that you can do and how you get the bonuses. That's a very cool aspect of the game, and it just works for me. I do like this game quite a bit, and I even like the way that turn order is chosen as well, because I just came off of playing 5 Tribes and maybe even a couple of other games where you had to bid for turn order. I hate that. I hate bidding for things. I feel like it punishes players too much if you overbid or underbid when turn order is incredibly critical. In this game, turn order is still critical, but even if you decide to go last, you get cool stuff. If you go dead last, you get a very cool extra meeple. But maybe you go dead last and want something else that's a little bit higher if you're able to take those spots. You have different options, and if you know, it may be worth it for you to go later on if you're getting the cards that you need, or you're getting a bonus victory point that may even push you over the edge into ending the game. There's really cool things like that. So I love the way that the turn order works on that. It's a relatively small thing, but it just works for me. So a lot of things in this game are maybe not the most revolutionary in the world, maybe not the most like epic and exciting, but it's fun. It really is. And I wanted to get more and more Euros into my collection. I think that this one is definitely here to stay. I think that the upcoming expansion may even solidify that and make it even more fun, but who knows. But for now, solid Euro game. I like having games that I know that the heavy Euro players in my group will be definitely willing to play. In fact, one of the people that I played with only plays Euro games and had a ton of fun with this game. So that's probably a much better endorsement than even I could give it. Viticulture, solid game. Eager to see what else Stonemaier Games comes up with. This or Euphoria would get a really high recommendation from me. My name is Nick, this has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day in every way. Take care.